Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a bunch of fun projects planned. But first, let me start over here. I'm going to tell you what I'm putting in, and then I'll tell you everything that I have planned. So I'm going to start off with 1 stick of margarine. I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of flour. Next, I will put in 1 cup of sugar. So the recipe calls for an 1/8 cup of cinnamon. Now that means 2 tablespoons. And now 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Could have added a bit more, but this is what I have in this jar. And now I'm going to combine all this to make a crumb mixture. And while I do this, I'll tell you everything that I have planned for today. So over here, we're going to make a cinnamon crumb cake. And this is the crumb mixture that will go on top. I am going to make some beef broth. I've had some beef bones in my freezer for a little while, so I want to make that. And also I want to make something for dinner next week that needs the beef broth. So instead of buying the broth in the store, might as well use up the bones that I have sitting in my freezer anyways. Next, I want to make some pizza sauce. As you can see, I have lots and lots of tomatoes here. So I want to make that. It's a freezer pizza sauce. It's one that I've tried already. My family loves it. It's really, really good. And I'm looking forward to making it with garden tomatoes. And then I also want to make a strawberry shortcake bun, which is a twist on a cinnamon bun. I'm going to make that so that we can break our fast on that. So that's everything that I have planned for today. We'll see what we get to. And I'll bring you along all the fun stuff that we're making in the kitchen today. So this is almost there. Still have some dry bits of flour. Okay, this is good now, and I'm going to set it aside. Now we're going to do the cake part. So we're going to start with 1 cup of, the recipe says coffee rich, but it's the whipped topping. The company is Rich's, but you can use any one. Yeah, you didn't even have to measure it. 8 ounces is 1 cup. We'll know for next time, and you'll know for yourself, no need to measure this. Okay, now we can add 2 eggs. I'm going to use the same measuring cup to crack the eggs into, 1 at a time, in case one is bad. I don't have to get rid of the whole bowl. And now I'm going to mix this together. Looks like the egg is fully combined. Now we can set this aside as well. Okay, now to make the actual cake mixture, we're going to start off with 3 cups of flour. Next, we'll add 1 1/2 cups of sugar. Next goes 4 teaspoons of baking powder. And 1 teaspoon of salt. Now we're going to combine this, and then we'll add the rest of the ingredients. Now we can add 2 sticks of margarine. And I'm going to cut them into smaller chunks so that it is easier for the machine to combine it all. It also helps to have it out sitting at room temperature for even just a couple minutes to soften it. Oops, that fell in. Okay, now we're going to mix this in, and then we'll add in the eggs and whip that we combined earlier. Now once you add the egg and whip mixture, As soon as it's all combined, turn off the machine. You don't want to overmix this. That's it. I have 2 of these 9-inch round deep pans. The cake bakes best in these type to make sure that they're tall so that when it bakes, it doesn't overflow. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our cake mixture and we're going to divide it between the 2. When I scoop anything out of my mixer, I like having a spatula that has a rounded edge. It helps me go along the edge easily and get all the batter. I'm going to flatten these in the pan so that it has an easier time baking. It doesn't have to be completely flat, or just no big mountains in the center. Now that we've got this done, we're going to top it with our crumb mixture that we set aside earlier. And this is a crumb cake, so be generous with it. My family loves cinnamon, so they'll be so excited that I've made this for them to enjoy over the next few days. And actually this freezes very good, so chances are that one of them will probably go into the freezer. Now before this goes into the oven, just notice this. I don't want the smell of burning paper while this is baking. This will now go into the oven for 40 minutes. But while this is baking, I've got some water boiling for the beef broth. I'll turn the camera around so you can see how I make that. Okay, I have my water boiling here, and we're just going to start adding the beef. Now we're going to add some salt and black peppercorn. The reason why I like to bring up my water to a boil first is that it tends to produce a cleaner broth. And I like to keep the spices simple so that I can use the beef broth for a variety of dishes without compromising the flavor, leaving it a very neutral flavor. Now I'm going to cover it again. I'm going to let it come up to a boil. And once it's at a boil again, we're going to let it simmer for a nice few hours until this is done, and we'll be able to cool it, put it into containers, and freeze it for whenever we want it. Okay, now that I've got the cake in the oven and I've got the beef broth going, I'm going to start prepping the tomatoes for the pizza sauce. Now, it's hard to measure because how am I going to measure this if I just have to half it to be able to roast it? So we need 12 cups of tomatoes. I think those large ones, I'm going to consider 1 cup. I have here 1, 2. The medium ones, like these, maybe I'll consider a half a cup to a 3/4 cup. It's going to be rough. It won't be exactly. So let's see how many tomatoes we have. We have a lot here, and we'll combine all different types. Ideally, I would be using just like Roma tomatoes because these are best for sauces. We're using whatever the garden is providing. Trying to put together the large ones with the large ones and the smaller ones with the smaller ones. These are medium. These I would consider small. And I didn't wash any of these tomatoes yet, so before I go ahead and cut into it, I'm actually going to wash it. But let's do our count to see if I need to rinse any of the small tomatoes as well. Some of them are really, really tiny. But as soon as they start like turning colors, that means that it's not gonna get any bigger. So might as well just harvest them. So I think I am gonna use all this, and we're gonna adjust the recipe to however many cups this comes out to. So let me go wash all this up, and I'll come back and show you how I prep this for the oven. Okay, these are all now washed up. Over here I have all of my little ones. And I think I'm gonna start off with measuring this, putting it into the bowl, and then we'll cut up these smaller ones. Sorry, these bigger ones. Now I divided them by how I would measure them by cup. So like this big one is one, I would count as 1 cup. These are about, let's say 3/4. So this is 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's see how many cups we get from this. So we'll count these as 10. I'm gonna cut up these bigger ones. I'll just cut them in half and put it into the bowl as well. Now with all these big ones, we're also just gonna cut it up. I'm gonna cut out the core. Any blemishes like this, now is the time to remove it. If you don't like seeds in your pizza sauce, then you could remove it now, but I haven't had an issue with it in the past when I've made this sauce. So I'm gonna leave it in for now. If after it's roasted and blended up, I feel like it's too much, I am going to run it through a fine mesh sieve and remove the seeds then. I'll try to remember to do it before I add the spices so that nothing stays in the sieve. Whatever I want in the pizza sauce will stay in the pizza sauce. Okay, this is now done. And I'm gonna have it sit on the counter until the oven is available to roast these up. Okay, the oven is almost ready for us. So I got here 2 cookie sheets that I've lined with a parchment paper. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the tomatoes, I'm gonna put it cut side down. Okay, it's amazing that I was able to fit all of the cut ones on one tray. Because like this, these little ones will need to be mixed a few times in between while it's roasting. So it'll make it a lot easier. The recipe says to drizzle this with 2 tablespoons of oil. From my experience, it tends to be a little bit of a very thick paste once I blend it up. So I'm going to be generous with the oil. It's going to be more than 2 tablespoons, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Now I'm just going to shake this to get it all nice and toast and covered all the tomatoes. I think for this, I'm going to get a pastry brush and I'm going to make sure that the entire tomato skin is covered with oil. This is an extra step, it's not necessary. I want to try and get the smoothest color possible on these. So I've made this in the past with store-bought tomatoes. And it came out really, really good. I'm very excited to try it with homegrown tomatoes and see how it comes out. Also, every time I've made it with cherry tomatoes. So I'm wondering how it'll come out now that I'm using these bigger ones. So we have just a few more minutes until the oven is ready. So we're gonna let this this sit over here until we're ready to put it in. Okay, my oven is finally ready, so I'm gonna get this into the oven on 350. Let this roast for 90 minutes. And I think every half an hour, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a little shake so that it doesn't get burnt on any of the sides. And I'm gonna set a timer for 30 minutes, and we'll do that 3 times so that we can keep on just giving this a little shake like that every 30 minutes. So some time has passed now. These have come out of the oven. I have let them cool a little bit. Now we're just gonna take this, transfer it into the bowl. I'm gonna blend it up and see if I wanna remove any seeds before we go ahead and combine it with the spices. That has a lot of liquid, so I think I'm gonna pick up the tomatoes with a spatula and put it in, and then I'll take the juices and put that in as well. Now, if you don't want the skin in your sauce, once it's roasted, it's very easy to just peel it off. So you can just pull it right off. I don't know why I'm doing it. It's enjoyable, actually. Satisfying. Let me clean up over here a little bit before I go ahead with the next step. Okay, I'm gonna cover this. I'm gonna blend it up, and then I'll make the decision if I should run it through a sieve to get rid of the seeds. I think I'm okay with the amount of seeds that are in there. Okay, so before we continue blending it up some more, we're gonna add the rest of the ingredients. And the recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now I decided to use a fresh lemon. 1 lemon is about 2 to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. So we'll go ahead and squeeze that in. It's nice and juicy. The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. I just went ahead and I minced a few garlic. My family likes the garlic flavor, so I don't care if it has more of a garlic flavor. Next, we're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of oregano, 2 teaspoons of parsley, 2 teaspoons of basil, and this is actually basil from our garden that I dehydrated. I'm gonna do a bit more. Some garden freshness in there won't hurt. 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper flakes. Now I'm going to blend it up until it's nice and smooth. Hey, this looks good. I'm gonna get out some containers. I'm gonna divide it. I'm gonna label it. 1 will go in the fridge, the rest will go in the freezer. Now, some people might think this is extreme, but knowing my family, they'll be mad if I throw away even just a drop of this. So I'm gonna go ahead, clean out the ladle with a spatula. And I'm gonna do the same thing with a bowl of the food processor. Okay, so this one that is not completely full, is going to go into the fridge. And now we got 2, 4, 6, 8 containers for the freezer. So they're still a little warm. I'm going to let it sit out over here. I'm going to prepare some labels for it. And once it's cooled off completely, we're going to put this away. Now, if I didn't say this, this is a very good freezer pizza sauce. It freezes very well, defrosts very well. It's a great option to have if you want to make something like this. I want to start making the strawberry shortcake buns. I didn't show it on camera, but I have 2 pounds of strawberries here that I cut off the tops and I washed it up. I'm going to dice it up now. Something to note, the recipe says that you could use frozen, just defrost it before you do this step. Now as I'm cutting this up, I'm actually going to get out a pot to put this into. I don't think I actually need such a big pot, but I'm going to need to put in 4 cups of sugar, and I think my pot, one size down, would be too small to handle that amount of sugar. So as I'm cutting it up, I'm going to put it in there. And it doesn't have to be cut perfectly because it's going to get cooked down. So it does not have to be perfect. Okay, now that I've got this here, I'm going to add 4 cups of sugar. And the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. Hopefully I have enough in here. Perfect. Now we're going to take this, we're going to move over to the stovetop. I'm going to turn on the heat on medium-low. And I'm going to stir this until all the sugar has dissolved. This is going to be sort of like a jam. And this will become the filling for our strawberry shortcake buns. So this would replace the cinnamon in the cinnamon bun. The sugar is not fully dissolved, but it is combined and not dry anymore. But I'm going to keep on doing this until it has dissolved. Then I'm going to increase the flame to high and bring it to a boil. And then I'm going to cook it for 8 to 10 minutes. I'm going to higher the flame. And we're going to wait for this to come to a boil. Now that this is coming to a boil, I'm going to make a timer for 8 minutes and we'll check it then. But now it's important to remember to keep on mixing so that it doesn't burn. And I don't know if you could tell, but it's so much, like the strawberries have softened so much already just from the heat as the temperature was coming up. Okay, it's now good. So I'm going to remove this from the heat. And while we're still here by the heat, I got a pot here. I'm going to create a double boiler. In here I have 2 tablespoons of butter, a 1/4 cup of milk, and a 1/2 cup of water. And we're going to let this melt. Now if you want to make this parve, you can use margarine instead of the butter, and you can use coffee creamer instead of the milk. And if you don't want to do a double boiler, if you have a microwave, you can do this on high in the microwave for 30 seconds. You just want to melt the butter. Once this is done, we're going to move over to the island and we're going to make the dough. The good part about this dough recipe is that it doesn't need to rise for very long. We do just a partial rise of like a few minutes before you assemble the buns. And once the buns are assembled, we're going to let it rise in the oven for a couple minutes. And then we're going to bake it. I think this is good. I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to move this aside to let it cool off. I'm actually going to remove it from on top of the hot water. Okay, now we can start making our dough. And we have here our melted butter cooling off, and we have here our strawberry jam that we made also cooling off. I'm doubling the recipe. So the recipe calls for 2 3/4 cups of flour. So I'm going to do 5 1/2. Now we're going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar. So again, I'm doubling, so I'm going to add 6. And I've pre-measured that in here. Now the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to do 2 teaspoons. And finally, it calls for a packet plus 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, or 4 1/4 teaspoons. So we need 8 1/2 teaspoons. 8 1/2. Okay, we're going to give this a little mix, and then we're going to pour this into the mixture. And we're also going to add in 1 egg. So 2 eggs because we're doubling it. Okay, it says that it shouldn't be sticky. It's still a little bit, so I'm going to let it go for another minute. And then we'll transfer this to a bowl to let it rise for 5 minutes. Okay, we're gonna call this done now. Oh yes, it's good that I waited that extra 2 minutes actually, almost 3. So I'm gonna transfer this over to a prepared bowl over here. And now that this is here in the bowl, we're gonna let this sit on the counter for 5 minutes. And while it's sitting and waiting, I'm gonna prepare the surface over here so that we can roll out our buns. I'm actually also gonna prepare the cinnamon mixture for the half of the dough that will be made into cinnamon buns. And I have a recipe that is an imitation of cinnamon buns. And they make it with brown sugar. So I'm gonna do half a cup of brown sugar. The brown sugar adds like a little bit of a caramelized flavor to it. And I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. I'm trying to break up the brown sugar as much as possible. Okay, I'll consider this good now. Now, I'm going to take this dough. I'm going to divide it in half. Before I actually put it down on the counter, I want to sprinkle some flour. So I'm going to put some flour on top. I have a rolling pin here. I'm going to flour this as well. And we're going to roll this out to be a 15 by 9 inch rectangle. See, so this rolling pin actually has measurements on here. So we're at about 9 inches wide. So now we just have to get the 15. We are definitely there. So I think I'm going to start off with the cinnamon one because I want the strawberry to cool off a little bit. So what I went ahead and did off camera was that I melted some butter. Figured if we're doing a dairy, you might as well do it all the way and do butter instead of oil. And I'm going to smear some over the dough. I melted, I think, 3 tablespoons of butter over here. Yeah, you can do between 2 and 3 tablespoons. I don't want it to be too oily. And now I'm going to sprinkle the cinnamon sugar over top. I'm going to pour it all on and we're going to spread it out. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start rolling so that the roll stays 15 inches. We're rolling at the 9 inches. We're rolling up. And you want to get it the tightest possible. So every few turns, pull it back like that. We'll get it nice and tight. Now when we come to the end, I like to pinch the dough a little bit to ensure a good seal. And I'm going to pinch the ends as well. Now we're going to cut this into 12 pieces. So I'm going to start by cutting it in half. And then each half, we're going to do half again. And then each of these will be cut into 3. I'm going to bake this one. This one's pretty small. I don't want it to burn before the rest of it is done. So now I have here a cookie sheet that I've prepped with a parchment paper. And we're going to place these buns on here. Let's see. We're gonna move this aside. I'm gonna start this again and we'll do it with the strawberry this time around. Okay, this is way bigger than a 15 by 9. I might not have divided it exactly evenly. It's not as thick as I would have imagined, but we're gonna start putting the strawberry filling over top. I love that bright red color. I think I'm gonna get a slotted spoon so that we don't get as much of the juice on there. Okay, let's get rolling. I'm gonna do this a little bit differently than usual. I folded it over quite a bit, and I'm gonna pull some of the strawberries back, that it should be in the center as well. And only after that I'll start rolling. I am gonna have a job to clean up here. No strawberry should leak out from there. Okay. Just getting some paper towel to do a quick cleanup before I start cutting this. But we'll consider this good for now. I have my prepared cookie sheet over here. I don't even have a clean surface to put it on. Okay. It's not holding. Okay. We'll just start cutting and hope that they're all pretty much the same size. And as I'm cutting it, I'll put it on the cookie sheet. So much of the good stuff is falling out. Just gonna put some on top. I don't want to lose all this. Okay, so this is what it's looking like right now. The recipe said to cover it with foil and put it in an oven that was on 200, but then let it turn off the heat and let it sit for 10 minutes. Now I'm gonna put this into the oven for 20 minutes. We're gonna remove this, raise the oven temperature to 375, and when that reaches temperature, I'm gonna uncover this, put this in the oven and bake it for 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, the cinnamon buns are now in the oven doing the baking part. So I'm gonna make the icing that will go up on top. I'm gonna start off with 2.5 cups of confectioner sugar. I'm gonna see if I can double it so I have enough for both the strawberry and for the cinnamon one. And this is a 1/2 cup measure. Okay, I'm going to 1.5 the recipe. So now the recipe calls for 4 ounces of whipped cream cheese. So I will do 6 ounces. Perfect. And last, the recipe calls for 1/4 cup of milk. And now we're going to mix this together until it's a nice consistency that we should be able to drizzle over the top of the buns when they come out of the oven. Okay, it's all combined. I want to get it nice and smooth. There's still some little chunks in there. I'm going to try to get it as smooth as possible. Okay, I'll consider this good. I'll leave it on the side until the buns are ready and coming out of the oven. So I added the icing on here. We're going to do a little taste test. I'm going to start with the strawberry one. I feel like so much of the jam is out. There's nothing inside. Tastes delicious though. I will cut the strawberries smaller next time. Let's taste the cinnamon one. It's a classic. Delicious. Hey guys, just wanted to show you everything that we accomplished today. As you can see, it's dark already outside, but these are all divided. I got 4 32-ounce containers of beef broth. I got 8 of the 8-ounce containers of pizza sauce. This is our crumb cake, one of them. The other one I have over there wrapped in foil. It's gonna go in the freezer. And this is our strawberry shortcake buns. And these I think I'm gonna transfer to a 9x13 pan, and some of them will be eaten fresh. The rest will go in the freezer. Look at that. Delicious. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you like seeing these videos that I put out, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified whenever I post a new video. And if you like watching these videos, I'll link some videos right up here you can watch between now and my next upload. Thank you guys again. See you next time.